This is the Hope Not Nope podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dillon Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome back to the next episode of the Hope Not Nope podcast. This episode is going to be one of my favorites because it is all about CrossFit. We are big CrossFit fans. We have our Fit Aid here, wishing that we were sponsored, but we're not sponsored. But we're thankful because this episode is going to be all about CrossFit, different movements, different athletes, different things that we love. And so we are excited to share it with you because the CrossFit Open just ended and CrossFit Quarterfinals just ended. And for us, this is a huge part of our journey as lifelong athletes. And so listeners, if you're not a CrossFitter, you can still stick around. Maybe it'll inspire you to drop in at a gym someday, but maybe it'll just inspire you in your life in general. There's still a lot of things to learn and lessons that are going to come from this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it. For me, I'm going to share a little hope story first, and then Dylan's going to dive into his. My hope story, I have two, hope stories that are coming in the future that I want to share about. Number one, if you have listened to all of these episodes, 25 episodes so far, thank you so much. If you haven't, episode number 1 shares about a CrossFit event that I did, my first ever CrossFit event, and I'm excited to share that I'm going to be competing in that same event this upcoming year. And it's pretty high level event, and I'll still be competing as a scaled athlete, but I'm just so excited to go back because it's going to be in the Olympic arena in Lake Placid, which, if y'all don't know, Miracle is one of my favorite movies ever, and I've seen it so many times. I love the Olympics, I love USA hockey and just that whole story, and so I'm so excited to be competing in the arena. Last year it wasn't at the arena, it was in their gym, and so I'm just so excited. So that's a hope story for me, even though it's coming in the future. And my second hope story, which is a huge announcement actually, is that...
Drum roll please!
We, Hope Not Nope, is going to the CrossFit Games for Masters Athletes, the Legends Classic. We are so pumped. It's at the end of the summer in Birmingham, Alabama.
Roll Tide.
And we just can't wait to go. And I've had the opportunity working as more of the event planner with Hope Not Nope, working with their team, and it has just been awesome so far. And so over these next couple of months, we're getting ready for that. We're going to be selling the book, selling merchandise, really connecting with the athletes, and I am so excited. So Dylan, you can respond to some of that if you would like, but also, why don't you share your hope story? I know you've been a CrossFit athlete for almost a decade now, let's be real, but why don't you share your hope story of your favorite CrossFit moment throughout the last year?
Perfect. This is great. I'm excited to share this because it's so hard to narrow down hope stories when you've been involved with a sport from different angles of it for so long, as an athlete, as a coach, as a person on the CrossFit medical team, all these different avenues. So for me in the past year, my hope story would be PRing my overhead squat. It is a movement that I've struggled with. It's a movement that hasn't been showing up in competitions as often. So I will be honest, I stopped working on it as much as I probably should have been. And this year I said, you know what, no, I'm going to work on this weakness. I want to get a good overhead squat position. And I just want to feel comfortable doing this movement. It's very difficult to hold a barbell over your head, keeping your elbows straight, keeping your heels down, and then doing a squat while stabilizing this weight with long levers. Because if you don't know this about me, my arm span is way bigger than my height. It worked great in basketball and for football, but in CrossFit it does not have a lot of advantages. So an overhead squat has always been a difficult movement for me, and I always knew why, and I knew what I had to work on in order to achieve a better overhead squat, but I didn't do it because I didn't want to do it because of the amount of effort that it took to do it, and I felt like my effort was spent better in other areas. But this year I said, no, that's not going to happen. You're going to lean into it and you're going to learn how to get a good overhead squat. So put myself through an overhead squat cycle, a bunch of different little things that I was working on, and it all came together and I PR'd I forget exactly what the PR was. I think it was like 170. But I was aiming for like 150.
Yeah.
And then I hit 170, which at the time was my body weight. So I overhead squatted my body weight, something that I didn't think would be achievable that soon in that time frame that I was working on it, and became achievable. So it was a hope story in the sense of like, this movement was so difficult for me. And it's not one I would put on the top of the list of like, oh yeah, it's in a workout. It's like, oh crap, here we go again. Where now I'm like excited for that movement. Not because I'm great at them, but because I have a level of proficiency that still keeps me competitive with that. And it gives me that more of a feeling of confidence in movement of my body from being able to do something that's that difficult. And then to respond to the announcement, oh my gosh, we were so excited to go down. If you are a listener or an athlete that's going to be there, or if you're in the Alabama area and you're going to be at the event, like come to the booth and just say hi. Like you don't have to get anything. Just come say hi to us. Like we just want to shake your hand. And for people listening who don't really have a reference of the Legends Championship and CrossFit Games for Masters, like what is this thing? CrossFit's broken up into age divisions, not weight divisions, but age divisions. So there's a teenage division, and then there's the individual that goes 18 to 34. Yes, wide age range, and I'm in that one, and I cannot wait for the next few years where I get to go into Masters. Masters is broken up. It's 35 to 39, 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and then so on, moving forward throughout the age span. These are the athletes living Hope Not Nope, and they don't really know that Hope Not Nope exists yet.
Yeah.
Some do, but a lot of them don't. But they're really the examples of what we can do as we age. They're the examples that we can still do high intensity interval training. They're the examples that our body still adapts, that muscle is still built, that aerobic capacity is still developed, that power is still developed as we get older, if we're participating in it. So yes, they're competitive, but they're lifelong athletes. And just seeing the videos that come out of this of like, a 75-year-old woman doing a strict pull-up with 50 to 70 to 80 pounds on her. Like let's just pause and think what her grandchildren think of grandma. Like my thought would be, my grandma's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Let's go.
Like, look what she's doing. Wow, that changes the whole dynamic of how we look at aging. It changes the whole dynamic of what we know is possible. And these masters athletes that are sacrificing and they're not getting a ton of sponsorships and getting paid for doing this. Like they're out there for the love of the sport, for fitness, to push themselves to new limits. It's like the common debate of like college sports versus professional sports. Like these are the athletes doing it because they love it and they want to set the example for the next generation to follow. Not that doesn't happen in the younger divisions, but it's just more pronounced in this division. So we are just so honored and excited that we get to be a small part of that.
Yeah, this past year, really the past 3 years of doing CrossFit, of us being together, it's been awesome to get to work out with you as my partner. It's been awesome now getting to work out with you as coach and as my husband, and to kind of coach you at times. And it's been so awesome, and really like makes me excited for our future, because we don't do CrossFit to do CrossFit. We do CrossFit because we see the benefits of it long term. And part of that is because we don't go to a gym and we're not doing crazy metcons all the time, but we have a certain way that we train that we're able to still move our body, but also take time to rest and recover as well. So like the methodology in which we use as CrossFit athletes is not necessarily what every person sees in a gym, but for us it works, and the way that it works is going to allow us to continue to compete long term. And I mean, we want to be the parents and the grandparents who can outlift. Like I'm already challenging my nephews that I can outlift them this summer, and I think they both think that they can, and I'm like, I think I still have like at least a year on them. Like they're 14 and 15, about to be 16, right? And it's like, I think I can still I think I still get them. And so like but I want to be able to have that spirit long term, and I know CrossFit is a big piece of that. And so I don't know, this past year was just so special getting to, you know, we got married and just continue our journey as spouses, but then also like in the CrossFit space as well. And that, you know, we're going to the Legends Classic, the CrossFit Games for the Masters athlete, the week before our 1 year married anniversary. And it's just, I don't know, it's cool. God's cool. Like that, how awesome is that to get to celebrate that together? But we should probably hop into the question. We just want to chat about CrossFit the whole time, but we get to, but with questions. So our first question is from a listener named Jackson, and he asks, I've been doing CrossFit for a bit now and I have loved it, but I'm starting to feel some lower back discomfort when I do overhead movements like jerks, handstand push-ups, and other gymnastics like toes to bar. Any tips or anything I'm missing that I should work on to prevent this?
To answer this question, and for a lot of questions that are out there, because the common theme is that why people don't do CrossFit is that they're intimidated or they're afraid. And the reason that they're intimidated or afraid is either they've seen the elite athletes who are doing incredible things, like absolutely incredible things that most people are capable of, but they have to put in a lot of work to get to that point. The other reason they're afraid is that in the early days of CrossFit, there was a bad rap on injuries in CrossFit. And since then, they've done a really good job of educating coaches more and looking more at programming and figuring out how to use progressive overload in a way that keeps their members safe and healthy, because part of CrossFit is being able to be consistent. And if with any workout, if you're not able to be consistent, it's not going to serve you long term. So with injuries in CrossFit, what the research shows right now is that the injury rate in CrossFit is actually less than the injury rate of recreational running, gymnastics, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding. So it's actually less than these other things that are out there. The reason being is that a lot of gyms are doing a really good job of educating their members what movements they are ready for and what movements that they need to build up further for. So when we look at any of these higher level movements like a toes to bar. So if you don't know what a toes to bar is, you're hanging on the bar, you're using a kip swing and then engaging your lats, going back and then kicking your feet up to the bar so that your toes hit it. That's a toes to bar movement. It's a complex movement. When you get into CrossFit and you get to ring muscle ups and these other things, you're like, oh, toes to bar is basic. No, toes to bar is a difficult movement.
It's so hard
to get. But before you ever go to a toes to bar, can you do a hollow hold? Can you do a Superman? Do you have the joint integrity? Do you have the neuromuscular capacity? Do you have the grip stamina? Do you have the lat engagement? Do you have the things that are needed to execute a toes to bar? If no, we have to go back and work on those things. For example, the other movement you mentioned is a jerk. So bar on your shoulders, you're dipping the hips. When I dip, you dip, we dip, we all dip. You dip, you drive, and you dip under the bar again to catch it, and then stand up with it. And that's a push jerk, a split jerk. You dip, you drive, you catch in a split position, then you walk your feet back in, and you stand up with the bar overhead. So that's our jerk position. Before you jerk, do you have adequate shoulder mobility to get into that position? Do you have integrity that you're not doing this crazy arch back position that all the forces is going down to your lower back? Have you built up the ability to do a push press and then a push jerk and then a split jerk? So with every movement in any domain of fitness, there's always progressions that need to be done in order to make sure that you are ready and that your system is ready to express that bigger movement that you're trying to do. So what ends up happening is people get into a workout that they're in week 2, they still don't really know how to jerk, they don't really know how to toes the bar, but they're gonna go for it because the clock is ticking and the class is fun and it's competitive and they wanna compete against their friends and just show that like they belong. So they start arching their back like crazy, throwing this weight overhead that they have no business throwing up overhead, going to a toes the bar and just dumping their low back, hinging crazy at their back, not using lat engagement. They don't have the right shoulder mobility yet to do it. They haven't built up tolerance to that type of movement. And now they're building volume on top of it. They did too much too soon. That's where the injury comes from. not from the movement itself, but from the load and not being prepped for it. So a long-winded answer to say, if you're experiencing low back pain with these particular movements, we have to go back and ask, well, what's the foundation? How much of a foundation have you built? And CrossFit has done a really good job at better identifying the foundation and implementing it into their classes. And coaches have done a much better job of pulling people aside and going, hey, guess what? You're not ready for a split jerk yet. You will be, but we want you to get there appropriately because we want you to be here long-term. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, this person's split jerking, but they've been working on it for 6 years. You're working on a split jerk and you're new. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a PVC pipe or a training bar. And what you're going to do is work on the form, but we're still going to develop strength by using a dumbbell overhead press or a strict barbell overhead press while you're working on that higher level technique. Mm-hmm. So I hope that it's not a direct answer. Like a lot of times, like people are getting these injuries, they're just doing too much too soon. They don't have the right form. So their joints are being exposed to ranges and the extremes that they're just not prepped for yet. And same thing with muscles, tendons, the whole neuromuscular system. When we're exposed to things that we're not ready for too long and we're not ready for, that's where these things are going to come up. So the reason I say this is I made these mistakes early on in my CrossFit career. I trained way too hard. I got injuries, and it wasn't anyone's fault except for my own and trying to keep up. And my buddies and I look back now at the way that we used to train together, and we're like, oh my gosh, like, that is not how you do this. So we do have to put ego aside. We have to go, I'm in this for the long haul. I want the long-term gains. So I'm going to spend the time to perfect this with a PVC pipe, with a training bar, and then to slowly work up in weight, even though the guy next to me is split jerking 315.
We talk a lot about intention, and if you're Jackson or just listeners in general, if your intention is doing CrossFit for the long haul, then building this foundation is essential. If your intention is to do CrossFit as a trend and you know that you're going to hop to the next, kickboxing or whatever, cycling, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But like if you're going to hop, then you're most likely going to have these different discomforts because you're going to skip a lot of steps to try and be cool like the other CrossFitters who are more elite. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that in my journey with CrossFit, my intention has been the long haul because Dillon's been with me not since day one, but basically since day two in my literally day two in my CrossFit journey. And he didn't let me do things that were going to create injury. He didn't let me do a kipping pull-up until I could do strict pull-ups. I can't do handstand push-ups yet, strict, and so he's not teaching me how to kip them, where I know many other people who are doing these things and just skipping steps, and I hope that they don't get injured, but the likelihood of them getting injured versus myself is higher because of skipping steps. And so I think just for anyone listening and for Jackson yourself, ask yourself, did I skip steps, and can I go back to correct those steps and go back and build that foundation that you deserve to have so that you can have it for the long haul.
One of my favorite memories of Brandy is that last year was, or what would we say, 2 years ago now? Not the last Open, but the year before this Open.
Yes.
Was Brandy's first time doing the Open, and the first workout, Brandy was doing a scale that ended with pull-ups. She got to the pull-up bar, and people, they're kipping their pull-ups. Brandy was not in the space. She was still developing her strict pull-ups. She wasn't in the space to be ready for a kipping pull-up yet. She got to the pull-up bar and repped out. How many did you do?
I wish I remembered. 14 or...
14.
I think the goal was 16.
Yeah.
And I got 14 or so. I was just a couple short, but...
14 strict pull-ups. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, the amount of people that came up to her after that workout and were like, how did you do that? How did you do that amount of pull-ups without kipping? I did 20 kipping pull-ups, but I can't do one strict pull-up. And Brandon goes, well, my coach won't let me do them. And they were kind of a little confused as to that. But the point being is kipping pull-ups are a great tool to use in order to get high volumes of it when you're ready for it. But if your goal is to impress people, like a strict pull-up for that amount of reps, that was impressive. A lot of people and then when Brandy was ready for learning kipping pull-ups, she crushed it. She was ready for it, didn't have injuries because she built up a strict foundation of strength to now be ready for that type of movement.
Yeah.
And again, I want to make the point that goes for any type of exercise. Like if you haven't ran in 10 years and you signed up for a 5K, like please do the things necessary to be successful in that 5K so you don't go do the 5K, injure yourself, and now have a bad taste of movement and exercise and competition and never want to do it again. You know, if you haven't thrown a baseball in 20 years and you go out and you throw 60 pitches off the mound, your shoulder's going to be sore and you're likely going to have an injury. But if you went out and the first time you threw 15 pitches, and the next time you go out you throw 30 pitches, and the next time 45, and then the next time 60, you're going to adapt to that. And it's all about adaptation. We did an event at a CrossFit gym, and that's the point that we really hit home, is that spreadsheets don't lift weights. You can write a program up on the whiteboard. Guess what? That whiteboard did not get any % stronger from the workout being written there. The way that we get stronger is by doing the work, but then adapting to that work. If we push too far into a zone that we're not ready for, and our body's not able to adapt to that stressor, now we're set up for injury. So it's about, yes, we need the stressor, we need the stimulus, but then we need to drive adaptation for recovery.
And I hope that people don't hear that and think that that's nope, right? Like everything that we're saying right now is not nope. It's not this like, oh, you should be afraid to go and do these movements. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is take the necessary steps so that you can build the adaptation so that you can eventually reach those goals. There's a process to everything, but you can do it. The hope is that you can do it. You have the agency to do it. You have the goals. You're setting the framework. Like all of this is possible. All of this is hope. Just make sure you're doing the right steps.
Yeah, and add on to that, what is the trilogy of hope? Self-agency, goals, and then pathways or a framework to achieve that. If your framework is running you into the ground over and over and over again, that is leading you towards nope. So hope, there's an art to it, and there is a science to this. We know how much force the body takes on when it goes for a run. We have an idea about how many single leg contacts happen in a mile, and it happens to be about 750 single leg foot contacts. So if you're coming back from an injury, you're getting ready to run, like we can build up with plyometrics and see how many foot contacts can you do. Okay, you tolerated half of that. Okay, well now we have an idea of how far you can actually run before we start pushing too much into that, because if we push too much into it, the tissue's not going to adapt. And if we keep pressing into that, that's where that injury is going to occur. So as Randy said, it's not a message of nope, it's more of a message of hope. And how do we keep hope? Well, we have to use a framework that allows these things to become achievable. And the way that it becomes achievable is that there's levels to this and there's a process to this. And you just have to have the right framework to get to that.
Awesome. That was a great first question. All right, our next question I'm excited to answer, but also to hear your answer. Which CrossFit Games athlete is your favorite to watch and why?
Oh, okay. If you asked me a few months ago, my answer would be different. And if you asked me after the Summer Games, my answer will probably be different.
Fair.
And I'm actually going to let Brandy go first because I'm afraid that I might steal her answer.
Were you going to say Ariel Lowen?
She's becoming one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I'll share my reasons why. No, you share your reasons why, because I don't want to steal it. It's going to be the same answer. I know it. Okay, go for it.
I love Ariel Lowen. For those who don't know or don't follow CrossFit, she is currently the fittest woman in America. She got third at the games last year. She's my age, so I think she might even be a year older than me, maybe even 2 years older than me. So she's like in her late 20s. She has a daughter. She's married to a guy named Dillon, spelled the exact same way, which is just so cool, right? But the reason I love her is because she retired as a CrossFit athlete and became a mom. And then she just got back into CrossFit casually because she wanted to lose like the baby weight, right? And then just like qualified for the Granite Games in 2021, 2 years after having a kid. And won that, went to the CrossFit Games, has gone to the CrossFit Games the past 3 years, and this past year was the fittest woman in America. Not just the fittest mom, but the fittest woman in America. She works out in her garage. She's just so cool. I love her because she has like the grit, but but she's also incredibly hilarious. Like like I want to be your best friend. Like she seems so cool and fun and hilarious on social media. But she also is just like Christian and wants to like care for people and love people because that's like the Christian thing to do. But she'll also like drink a beer right before going out, like on a game, like for an event on at the CrossFit Games. And so I just love her, like what she embodies as a person, as an athlete. Like she's there to have fun. And maybe there's other things that you've noticed about her that you want to share, but I just tried to cover them all because I really am looking forward to see what she does this year at the games. But I also just want to see like the longevity of who she becomes as an athlete as she continues to get older, because man, I'm a big fan of her.
Yeah. From my point, all of those things, yes. And just seeing how her and her husband Dillon interact with each other, just it reminds me of us. They're playful, they're supportive, but they also push each other to be better. But they're also not. They know who they are. They know who they are as people. And Ariel getting on the podium at the CrossFit Games, like that could change people. And for her, she's like, I know who I am. This is an awesome accomplishment. I'm going to celebrate it and I'm going to soak it in, but I know who I am. And just seeing how she presents herself, and her husband, their videos are just so hilarious. Like, you know, there's all these videos of coaches with their athletes and they're going through all this strategy stuff and like, okay, you need to do this and chalk at this point and have your water ready at this point. And it goes to Ariel and Dillon, and Dillon's like, hey, Ariel, yeah. You do it, babe. Crush it. Yeah. And Ariel just kind of laughs and she's like, yep. And it's just so pure and just amazing to see that relationship, but also what they've accomplished and how much they just love on people. Like there was one in the behind the scenes that I think the guy was on the athlete control team in the CrossFit Games space. Found out that he lives in Texas and has actually gone over to their house and she's made him dinner for that. So just the welcome arms that they share with everybody, and all the interviews, she's always welcoming to the people and gives great answers. And I don't know, she knows they know who they are, and it's just awesome to see that. So I'm going to piggyback off of that answer, and I'm going to say from the male side of things, my favorite athlete on the male side of things is Patty Val.
I knew you were going
to
say that.
Patrick Val there. I had the opportunity to meet him in 2018 at the Eastern Regionals in Albany, and he was just a class act. Very, very, very nice dude. And just the amount of times that he's been in the sport, how many times he's had to fight back from adversity, and he continues to keep doing it and doing it and doing it time and again. And just, he's secretly hilarious. Like he's not out here like screaming and doing this and doing that, but like the little jokes that he has are hilarious. Like he is so funny. There's one example of they're asking him, the Buttery Bros are asking him, hey Val, do you have any celebrations? Like if you win an event, do you have a celebration ready that you go to? And he's like, no, but I'm gonna work on one. And at last year's games, he actually did, he won one of the events and had a celebration ready. And you could tell that from that conversation, he worked on it, not to be like, oh, I have a celebration, but because he thought it would be funny to do so. So I'm going to put him up there as well. He just has been doing it for a bit now. He always is fighting back. He's one of these guys that's never out of contention. Like he may be in the bottom 30 to 40th position after day one, and at the end of the weekend, he's standing on the podium. And he just has this grit and just this gift. And another guy that he knows who he is. He knows that his identity is not a CrossFit athlete. He knows who he is, and he knows that CrossFit is part of it. So he fights for it, and he's gifted, and he's put a lot of work into it, and he's very educated on the sport. But he also knows that he's got other things going on. So it's just cool to see well-balanced athletes that have been doing it really well for a period of time.
Yeah, and we share about the athletes because it's similar to, you know, watching the NFL or the NBA. Like, you have your favorite teams, you have your favorite athletes that you like to talk about, and CrossFit it's like that. It's a sport that we watch the athletes, and we love to see who they are and what the accomplishments are that they're going to achieve each year. And it's such a thrill for us as lovers of this sport.
Yeah.
Our next question is from a listener named Finn, and he asks, what do you wish more people knew about CrossFit?
Finn, great question. I think what I would want people to know more about CrossFit is that, yes, it's intense. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there's some flaws in it, like anything else in the world. But the thing I wish people knew more about CrossFit is that it's preparing you and showing you that you can do hard things in a controlled environment, in a safe place, to build up confidence to do those hard things in other environments. It's teaching you that you can look at the board and see this workout and be incredibly intimidated by it and sell yourself short when you first see it. But then the clock goes and you get into the workout, and then before you know it, you're laying on the mat, covered in sweat, with a hard breath, fatigued and tired, and your thought goes to, I just did that. Oh my gosh, I just did that. And you get home, and the first thing you want to do is share it with people that there's this really hard workout and I did it. And so I wish people knew that more about CrossFit, that it's not necessarily about the movements. It's not about the high intensity. It's not about what your Fran time is. Like, these are all parts of it. But to me, the bigger thing of why I love CrossFit and why I think other people would enjoy it is because it's pushing you into something that you don't think is achievable. That is achievable once you start getting into it. Mm-hmm. It shows you that you can take on hard things and not just take them on, but you can complete them. It teaches you that you have self-limiting thoughts in your head, that you have these self-limiting factors that you may not have realized before. But when you're staring at a clock and you got this bar in front of you and everyone else is working out around you and you feel like you need to do it because you're part of a team and it's community, and you start to realize, wow, I did 30 more reps than I thought I was capable of. And then you start thinking, where else in my life am I limiting myself? And it spills over to these other domains. Like, something hard comes up in a relationship. Hey, I know that I can do hard things because I have evidence of that. Now, like, how do I transfer that into this domain of life? Something hard comes up within a business. Okay, we faced a challenge before and we leaned into it and we got through it. Like, now I have evidence that I can take on hard things. So that would be my number one thing. And that's why I love the sport and continue to participate in it for 8 years now, maybe 9 years, is because of that. Like, I like the challenge of seeing something and going, oh, wow, I don't know if I can do that. And then doing that and going, like, stop selling yourself short.
Mm-hmm. Not only is it learning that I can do hard things, but I think my answer would be all the other lessons as well. I wish more people knew that CrossFit, especially when doing it the way that we were explaining to the first question to Jackson, like, CrossFit takes patience.
Yeah.
It really, and patience is a virtue that more people need in this world, so that it trickles into every area of your life, so that you can be patient in your home, you can be patient at work, you can be patient in your journey as an athlete. Like, CrossFit teaches patience. It teaches the importance of community, because even if you work out and do CrossFit in your gym, you necessarily don't start CrossFit in your gym. Typically you started it at a gym and then you chose at some point to create a home gym, right? Like a home garage gym or what have you. But you had some sort of introduction to it, and then you still have friends come over once in a while, or you have online coaches that you're connecting with, or you go to events or what have you. And so CrossFit is much bigger than just yourself and one person. It's really communal. And I think that that's what attracted me to CrossFit to begin with. I wanted to join a gym that I could be part of a class that was encouraging. And that, I didn't really know that was CrossFit. I just found a gym that had classes, and then it ended up being CrossFit. And now look at me a few years later, which is awesome. Like, I'm so thankful for that journey. But CrossFit teaches a lot of value when approached at with humility.
Yeah, I want to add on to this answer because it's something that I'm super passionate about, and it's aligned with Hope Not Nope's mission, but my life mission. The invention of CrossFit was not to be on ESPN. It was not to have these big competitions that these incredibly fit people are showing amazing things. That was a factor that happened because of it. An amazing factor. Like they changed the exercise physiology research, right? It used to be, no, cardio kills your strength gains. Well, these people just ran a 5K in a trail and it came out and deadlifted 500, 600 pounds. Like if cardio is supposed to kill their strength gains, how come they're PRing both of these things? They changed the exercise physiology books. That wasn't necessarily their goal. Their goal wasn't being on a big stage in front of millions of people, but that happened. Their original goal was to combat chronic disease. Their original goal was to say, hey, we have this method of high intensity interval training with functional movements that are constantly varied, that has the known and the unknowable, to battle chronic disease. Because this is an issue in the United States that's not being handled. This is an issue worldwide that's not being handled well. Our current system is keeping them in a reactive system in which we're taking people that are in chronic disease, they're in the disease pond, and we're just throwing them floaties and saying, go ahead and stay there. We'll keep feeding you this and keep you in that. Where CrossFit said, hey, what if we can get people out of there? What if we can help people lose weight? What if we talk about nutrition? What if we talk about movement? What if we talk about all of these lifestyle factors that is actual health, that the healthcare field was not and is not doing? So they took that head on and they said, we're going to open all these different affiliates around the world in order to combat chronic disease. And we want the super fit people. We want the people that don't think that they can get rid of their hypertension. They don't think they can get rid of their type 2 diabetes. They think that they're going to get older and they have to have Alzheimer's or dementia because that's what happens in their families. And so for me, it's always been my personal life mission is to show those close to us that we have agency, that we're going to have things that happen, but we don't have to have a chronic disease. Like we can get back to passing from natural causes of death. And the way that we do that is by how we live out our life. And CrossFit is the methodology of that originally took that on. So I wish also that people knew why CrossFit originally started was to combat chronic disease. And they've done an extremely, extremely good job of that.
And I wish that CrossFitters who are already doing CrossFit and that CrossFit as an organization remembered that that's their mission. Because I think that as anything grows, people within an organization, the head of the organization, can forget the original purpose. And not saying that every person has by any means, but that's something I didn't know for a while. But what a gift. Like for me, having chronic pain and now not having chronic pain, like a big piece of that was having the agency to go to a CrossFit gym and start this journey. And I hope that more people within the CrossFit community knows that as well. Mm-hmm. Let's dive into a rapid fire round. Rather than wrapping it up, let's rapid fire questions.
High intensity interval question training.
Yes. Okay. Which you could say them to me afterwards as well. I wrote them out so that, but if you have other ones, you could also do that too.
Let's go. You ask the question, I answer, but then you answer that same question. And then we go to the second question.
Okay. But then that's not really rapid fire.
That's okay.
Okay. First one, what's your favorite movement?
Deadlifts.
Oh, you went way faster than I was expecting.
All right, the reason I like deadlifts is because mechanically with my long arms that I think we talked about in this episode with overhead squats and just having longer limbs, it gives me better leverage for deadlifts compared to other movements. I enjoy the practice of handstand push-ups, but because my arms are so long, I have such a big range that I need to push through that it makes them challenging. So deadlifts I find to be my favorite because they're challenging, but I'm the most proficient and can move the most amount of weight in that movement. Like workout comes up and there's deadlifts in there, like in this fast open, like 185, like, oh, let's go. Like I can move that weight easily. To, okay, let's go to a heavy weight. My deadlift is my strongest lift. So I'm like, yes, let's go.
Awesome. Yeah. My favorite, I think, would go back to pull-ups for the reasons that we were explaining earlier. Like I love that glory story. I work hard at maintaining strict pull-ups while also being able to do kipping pull-ups. And so I think that's my favorite movement.
Love it.
All right, least favorite movement.
Overhead squats.
Okay, mine's thrusters.
Thrusters, yeah, that would be up there as well.
Yeah, I really like overhead squats. I'm new to them, but I think that those might be one of my favorites eventually.
It's one of her best movements. It blows my mind of how awesome her overhead squat
But
is.
that's because for like 2 out of the 3 years of me doing CrossFit, I was only allowed to use a PVC pipe and practice like the shoulders. Like that's all I was allowed to do for 2 years. So, anyways, okay. When you compete, would you rather compete in a team or as an individual?
Individual. I like competing as a team. It's a lot of fun. But you can hide behind your weaknesses. As an individual, you can't hide behind your weaknesses. They're on display, and I kind of like that level of vulnerability of like, okay, I have to go work on this thing. And there's something different of like letting yourself down versus letting a teammate down. And I like that mental battle of like, as a team, you don't want to let your teammates down. And we put a lot more thought into that. But for some reason, we're okay letting ourselves down. And I've realized I'm not okay with that anymore. I'm not okay with letting myself down. Like, why am I okay with that at any point? Why are we okay with that at any point? But it happens. And competing as an individual allows you to find those times or those little mental things that come up if you're like, well, whatever. Like, I don't do one more rope climb. Well, who cares? So
I would agree. I really like competing as an individual because I just feel so proud of myself and how far I've come. But I will say, having done a partner competition, I like the partner. I'm not sure how I would do with like a team of 4.
Yeah.
But the partner competition, like that really motivated me to like work hard on movements that I was kind of being like lax on, because I had like my partner, I knew she was practicing those movements as well. And so I think that, and then it was also it was really fun to get to like cheer them on. Like I'll cheer on the person next to me, but like to have my partner and cheer them on like in the middle of a workout, I just really value that because it reminds me of being in sports growing up, and it reminds me of when I used to work out at my old job and getting to cheer on those people as well. Like encouragement was so key during that time, and so key as a kid. Like I would foul out in basketball games, but I would encourage the people and help them up from the other team, So I don't know. I like getting to encourage my teammate as well. Okay, next question. What year is your favorite games year when you look back?
The COVID year.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the COVID year. So for reference, typically the games, it's the top 40 athletes, male, females, in the individual division 18 to 34. From around the world that come and compete. When COVID happened, we didn't know if there was actually going to be the games because of how much money it takes to put on and not having fans there. And there's just a lot of logistical things that CrossFit HQ had to work out in order to put on the games. And we lost a lot of sports through that year. And I really thought that CrossFit was just going to be another one that's just not happening. And it takes place in August. And they put it together, and they brought the top 5 male and female athletes.
In the whole world.
So instead of the top 40, it was just the top 5. There was no fans. It was just these top 5, and they competed at the ranch, which is where CrossFit got its start. And they competed without any fans screaming and cheering them on. So just imagine that, of going through this brutal weekend where at some point you rely on the crowd to give you the energy to do these lifts and these movements, to not having that and still competing. And the fact that the CrossFit still found a way to put it on and to see these top 5 athletes competing and just their competitiveness but camaraderie throughout that weekend of the event was just awesome. It was awesome.
I love that. My favorite, because we've gone back and watched a lot of the games, but I think my favorite would be 2022.
Okay.
Because that was, Tia's back this year, but that was like Tia's like last year before she had her daughter. And it was, for me, it was just so cool to get to watch that, having never watched CrossFit before, and watching her completely dominate was just awesome. But I'm pretty sure it was that games as well. That was when Annie Thorisdottir had her daughter and came back and podiumed, and just like the moment of her overhead squat or snatch, I forget what snatch, like it was just so cool. So as like a woman watching those athletes during that time was just absolutely unbelievable. Really cool first experience of watching the CrossFit Games live as well. Like we were dating at the time, and I would come over and we'd watch them at night, and that was just, I would say that was my favorite year for sure.
Yeah, adding on, sorry, it's become less of a rapid fire, but adding on to the COVID year, another very special moment that happened is that Matt Frazier and Tia crossed the finish line on the last event holding each other's hands because they were training partners. And he's the top male in the world, she's the top female in the world, and then just year after year after year after year, they're just dominating. But they were training partners. Frazier knew that was his last games. He knew he was going to be retiring. So he wanted to pass it with his training buddy. Tia was starting to get an idea that it could potentially be her last games. It ended up not being her last games. But we're just watching this, and you know, to me, as a fan, it gave me this moment of hope that the games were on. That they did it.
Yeah.
Like it tried to get shut down with COVID and everything, and they figured out a way to put it on. And the special moment of one of the best male athletes to ever do the sport, has dominated every aspect of it, to give him that moment to cross the finish line with his training partner was just incredible to watch.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just do two more quick ones. What is your favorite gym that you've dropped in throughout the country?
There are still more gyms that we need to drop into.
Yes,
so
very much so. We haven't dropped into many.
Yeah, so this answer could change in the future, but I think it would have to be CrossFit Mayhem.
Yeah, same, 100%. However, not saying Mayhem, like Mayhem was awesome, but last year in April, I also got to drop into just a random gym in Austin, Texas called Sola CrossFit. And Sola, because the street name was like South Lamar maybe, and so like they took the first letters. Anyways, that, if I had to send anyone to a gym that is like smaller, like Mayhem is massive. So if I were to be like, hey, if you need to go to a gym that's smaller throughout the whole country, I would either say one of the ones here, or I would say that gym, because it was like community oriented, so awesome. The gym owner talked to me for like 35 minutes after, just asking what I was doing in Austin. Like, it was such a cool experience. So I would also say that gym as well. Oh, and then the last, I forgot, one more. Okay. You have all these memorized where I don't, but what is your favorite benchmark workout?
Ooh, my favorite benchmark workout, it's not Fran. It's definitely not Grace. It would probably be Diane.
Okay.
Yeah, 21-15-9, deadlift, handstand push-up, deadlifts at 225. So deadlifts I can jam, handstand push-ups are things it's a thing I constantly need to keep working on, but I really enjoy it. It's one that I'm really strong at, deadlift-wise, and it's one that I need to work on, so they balance each other out, and it's just a fun one for me.
So, does a hero WOD count?
Hero WOD counts.
Okay, so I think I would say the Murph, mainly because that's the one that I've done so many times that I remember. Like, all the girls, I still kind of forget which one's which.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna say the Murph, even though I haven't done it with like a weighted vest yet. Like, I love Memorial Day. I love just what that stands behind, and it's just a staple that every year in May we're doing it, you know. So I think that would be mine. So
love it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. We loved this CrossFit episode, and we hope that you guys loved it, because we did. And Ariel Lowen, if you watched this, hi.
So wrapping this up, I want to point out that this is my first year in quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And I had a goal of being in the top 10% in the world, and quarterfinals changed this year where the top 25% made it into the next round. And when that shift happened, I had the thought of, well, maybe I can just like not train as hard, because it's top 25%, which I'm like, I got that pretty easy. But then I remembered, no, we got to keep the goal. We made the goal to be in the top 10%. And so I worked hard and I wanted to do everything I could to achieve that. And I ended up in the top 10.06% in the world, but then got to go on to quarterfinals. And what I want to say to close out this episode is that it doesn't have to be CrossFit. It doesn't have to be a particular workout. But just knowing that it takes so much courage to start anything new. And it takes people around you that are compassionate enough to welcome you where you're at and to know where your potential is. But then to say, we're going to take the approach of delayed gratification and we're slowly going to get you there. So if you're thinking about starting something new, the hardest step is that first step. It's not the 3 training sessions to get into the top 10%. It's not getting ready for a competition. The hardest step is taking that first step. But you will not regret taking that step. For me, I was introduced into this sport from a friend who stayed persistent of me coming to this gym and just doing a workout. And he kept poking at me and saying, you have to come. And eventually I said, fine, I'm going to come. And I stepped in. And that day I stepped into that gym, it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my career. It was so worth it. But it was hard. It was hard to step into something new, and CrossFit kind of has its own language, AMRAPs, EMOMs, and this and that. And anything you do that's new has a learning curve to it. But step into it. Be open, work hard, and just really lean into delayed gratification. That first time when I went to that gym, my deadlift was 225. This year in quarterfinals, there was a workout. It was 10 clean and jerks at 135, rest 1 minute, 10 clean and jerks at 185, rest a minute, 10 clean and jerks at 225, rest a minute, and then 245. I didn't get to the 245. But I clean and jerked 225 6 times, after clean and jerking 185 10 times and 135 10 times. And all this had to be done in a 10-minute period. And again, 3 minutes of rest, so really a 7-minute period of doing this lift. The weight that I used to not be able to deadlift, I cleaned and put over my head 6 times under fatigue. And the way that we got there was by respecting the process, trusting that there's levels to this thing, building the foundation, sticking with it, being consistent, having people in my corner, coaching me, guiding me, keeping me in it, both mentally and physically. So whatever you want to start with it. Work, stay consistent, have the people guiding you, and know that the outcome will eventually come. And then you get to look back and go, oh, wow, like I've come a really long way that I never thought was possible. And look at it now. So I think that is exactly how we want to end and wrap up this episode. Have a great week, and remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.